p.m. And time now for CHEA Use of Knowledge is Power broadcast with Dr. Marseille Wells-Strozier. Information on how to reach CHEA will follow today's broadcast. And now, here's your host.
Hello and good evening, listeners, and welcome to another night of CHEA Use of Knowledge is Power. Before I introduce our guests, I'm going to do my round robin as usual to my wonderful fans who are in my studio. I sound like Miss Hendricks. Paul, how are you?
Why do you think you have fans?
Are you here? Are you here every Thursday?
I am, but I'm paid to be here.
See, I got a man on the payroll. Got several men on the payroll. Women, we got men on payroll now.
Are you having a good week?
You know what? I had a wonderful week. Guess what I was doing today?
What?
In between students, I was planting flowers.
Nice. Oh, nice. When are you going to come to my house to do that?
Never. Never. People don't understand how much work it takes to do landscaping, planting flowers. They think it's so beautiful, but you have to maintain that.
Right.
So if I plant them, is he going to water them? He's going to say no because of the water bill.
Right.
Is that right?
You just don't seem like the type that would get dirt under their nails.
As a matter of fact, while my students were studying, I put my left foot and my right foot in the kitchen sink and washed my feet because I spilled dirt.
So I was right.
So I said, I hope my guests don't see my feet because, some dirt in between. But Al, how are you?
I am fantastic. How about yourself?
I am wonderful. I'm enjoying this weather.
Oh, man, it's beautiful.
Yes.
I see your Paul call it, what, your culture? Your culture, you're dressed in culture.
Oh, this is my Jamaican.
I love it.
Actually,
nice.
I'm not even going to say what store I got this dress from, but I love it. The only thing about it is that I'm short. And I trip over it. So a lot of summer dresses, I can't wear them. The sundresses, because they're too long. And I like to wear sandals with them. So I've been tripping over my dress all day.
Looks nice.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So listeners, tonight we're going to be talking about special education and the prison to school pipeline. If you're interested in this conversation, please give us a call at 239-5733. Again, the number is 239-5733. In the studios with me today, I have Bobbi Coats. She has been employed at Legal Services of Eastern Michigan for 1 year, primarily in the areas of education, advocacy, and public benefits administration. She is a graduate of Wayne State University Law School, where she was a graduate student who conducted research in the study of the school-to-prison pipeline, coordinated by Damon J. Keefe Center for Civil Rights and the Michigan ACLU. She is a longtime Flint resident who is originally from Jackson, Michigan. She also holds an undergrad degree from U of M Flint in criminal justice and sociology, and 3 associate's degrees from Mott Community College. I thought I had a lot of education. Bobbi is a member of the Genesee County the Genesee County Bar Association, the Michigan ACLU, and the National Lawyers Guide. Thank you so much. Gil?
Yes,
I got guide.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
all right.
Guild.
That's
Guild.
all right. I'm saying it wrong. Thank you.
National Lawyers Guild. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. Your topic, I find it so interesting because with me having the experience of teaching 19 years, I have taught K through 12, alternative ed for, what's that age, 16 to 24.
Okay.
And now I'm in adult ed for 25 and older. And special education and the prison to school pipeline is 2 of the main things that I deal with in adult education. So tonight we're going to be able to hear from the legal side when it comes to special education and the prison to school pipeline. But before we actually start talking about this, you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. What would you like to know? About my practice or?
I find that a lot of attorneys do come from Wayne State University. Is that the only local program for attorneys?
Well, there's a couple of law schools in Michigan. Michigan State has a law school, Wayne State, U of M. There's also Cooley.
Okay.
So a lot of people go to Cooley. University of Michigan Law School is one of the top 10 law schools in the country. So Wayne State, there's a unique opportunity because you're right downtown Detroit. You've got all the courts there and the district courts. So they have great programs. You can work right with the people that are doing the work in civil justice and things of that nature.
Okay, all righty. So let's talk about legal services of Eastern Michigan, and what type of advocacy do you provide for parents when it comes to special education?
Well, we help parents who are looking to get IEP and 504 plans for their children.
So let's go back and identify IEP. Of course, we know what it is, but for our listeners, what is an IEP?
So an IEP is an individualized education plan, and that is typically special education services that are provided by the school to the student at no cost. Under the IDEA Act is the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, which is a federal law administered in Michigan under the MARSE law. It entitles all students to a free and appropriate education.
Okay.
So it puts protections in place to make sure that students who need additional help with learning are able to get the supports that they need.
Okay. Now, from an educational standpoint, I want to make sure I have this right because I've never taught special ed. I just come into contact with them as an adult learner. So when we're talking about special education is only for K through 12.
That's correct.
In the K through 12 school district, it does not exist outside the K through 12 educational sector. A parent has to request, or is it the teacher who has to request for the child to be tested?
Well, the school has an obligation under the law to do what's called child find, and so they're supposed to be looking out for children who may be falling behind in their studies and maybe exhibiting problems. A lot of the time, the parent has to be the one to request it, and the parent should request it in writing.
Okay. Now, I know that certain medical illnesses aren't really... doctors say wait till a child gets to be a certain age in order for them to accurately diagnose something, because when they're younger, they could probably grow out of before they get to a certain age. Is this the same thing for special education? Is it a certain age in which they're supposed to test a child, or they can test a child?
Well, I think it depends on what they're seeing that the child needs.
Okay.
There's some children who are as young as 3 years old who have special education accommodations in place for things like speech and language development.
True. That is true. Okay, so the parent is the one who makes the initial request. Hopefully the teacher has done some observation in order to possibly tell the parent the problem that the child is having. And then the actual exam is done by a psychologist or psychiatrist. Which one is it done by?
I don't believe there's a requirement for it to be a psychologist as opposed to a psychiatrist. It has to be somebody who is a medical doctor. It has to be, or a licensed social worker, somebody who has there are different types of tests.
Okay.
So just depending, it's usually a school psychologist who conducts the primary testing. Occasionally it's a school social worker or somebody in a related field.
Okay, so you taught me something, because I always thought it was a licensed psychiatrist or a psychologist that made that decision, not someone other than that.
Well, it's somebody who is authorized, who has the medical and educational credentials to be able to administer the testing.
Okay. And so once the test is administered and they do have findings that the child need additional help, then that's when the IEP is created. Is that correct?
Well, it's all part of a process.
Okay.
Yeah, the parent, there's called a multidisciplinary educational team.
Okay.
And it typically consists of at least one of the student's teachers, regular education teachers, a special education teacher or a coordinator, usually a school administrator, and, the parents are included. So there's a few people that come together as a team to make sure that the child's needs are being met, come up with goals and things of that nature.
Okay. And when they do now, I'm thinking about a student that I had at CHEA Adult Skills Center, and she had a son that was in special education, and she was sent to me in order to get her GED. Wonderful young lady. And one of the problems she was experiencing is that her son was constantly kicked out of school, which created a problem with her being with me because she will always have to leave class.
Right.
So I had to tell some secrets in order for her to be able to stay with me and complete her GED, in which it did work out. So when a child has a IEP, there are certain requirements, or there are certain things in which the school have to follow when it comes to their behavior. And I don't know if you can answer this a little bit or not, but what about in-school suspension when it comes to children who do have an IEP in special ed? What are the requirements, or what is the state mandate on suspending children who are in special ed?
Well, there's a difference between an IEP and a 504 plan.
Please explain the 504 plan.
Sure. A 504 plan comes under the Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 504, and it's basically accommodations. So there's been an identified disability or impairment, and the school accommodates those in whatever way is appropriate.
So is every child in special ed have a 504?
Not necessarily. You know, an educational impairment may not necessarily be a disability, and vice versa. So, for example, like with a 504 plan, those sometimes are behavioral concerns like ADHD and oppositional defiant disorder, those kind of things. When there's a 504 plan in place, or there's some sort of behavior plan in place, the school has to conduct what's called a manifestation of a disability review. So before they change the placement of the student by, say, kicking them out of school for more than 10 days, they have to do this review to see if the behavior was a result or a symptom of the child's disability. And so if it is, if it was caused by the child's disability, then they have to take some other approach. So.
And is this the 504, correct?
The 504.
The 504 and now is the IEP, so those two different things. Are those done annually?
The IEP can be done annually. Typically, they do a reevaluation once a year.
But the 504?
The 504, that I believe that's also annually. I believe both of them, you can do a redetermination once a year.
That was one of the problems that we ran into. So the child was constantly suspended from school, which made the mother not be able to come to class. So then we had a psychologist come in, and the organization that referred the mother to our adult learning center, we all sat down. And so I told them about the school should not have been suspending the child the way they were because they had an IEP in place. I didn't know about a 504. And it probably needs to be modified, or something else needs to happen. They can't continue to expel the child the way in which they're doing it. The problem is that the parent who didn't have the skills, I shouldn't even say didn't have the skill sets. I would say I don't know if she didn't know by default or she didn't comprehend, because we do have a comprehension problem in Genesee County and across the United States, so it's not just here. But I don't know if she really comprehend the school's responsibility and her responsibility, because there were times that they would have conferences she wouldn't attend. She actually didn't know what was in the IEP. So when we have parents who aren't engaging with their children and who don't comprehend what's going on, this type of thing happen when a child is constantly, suspended. However, from the school side, I did understand from the school side why the child was constantly suspended, because he was violent. The mother even asked me, Al, could she bring him to class with me? I said, he was just throwing the chair. She said, yes. I told her no.
Right.
I told her no. But that's one of the problems that we're running into, is that parents can't comprehend the information and what's really taking place at these meetings when it comes to special ed and their children. So let's go into the prison to school pipeline.
Okay.
All righty. Al,
Yes.
did you know, and please correct me, you know, if your child needs additional help, that's exactly what that special education is for. If they have a medical, is it just a medical?
Well, I mean, it can encompass a couple of things. So it can encompass a medical condition. It can be a learning disability.
Yeah, the learning. Yeah. Okay, so prisons, well, they know how many prisons to build based on how many people are enrolled in special education. So this is where we get the prison to school pipeline. And people don't understand this has nothing to do with race. This has nothing to do with race. This has to do with, I believe, and this is only my thought, an economic thing. Those who don't have the resources, those who don't have the funding, they have a tendency to be the ones that are prodded into special ed, and then they are put into prison because they think, or they say, or maybe their studies have come to the conclusion that these are the individuals who will not have the type of skills in order to hold a job. Therefore, what they don't earn, they will take, and they will get into a lot of trouble. So therefore, a lot of them end up in prison. So what is the take with legal services when it comes to prison school pipeline?
Well, we don't do criminal work, so, a lot of that is outside of our practice area. But when there may be some sort of civil rights violation, we certainly can take a look at that and see, if there's anything that we can do. It's interesting. I agree with you that it's an economic factor. It tends to low-income communities and impoverished areas. But it also, even though it might be equal across the board economically, there's a disparate impact.
Yes.
So the impact, 31% of the students who are arrested for school-related offenses are Black children. So, it's a systemic problem. So, we're pushing certain students towards success, and we're funneling some others into the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's a special education related thing. Sometimes it's behavioral. Sometimes, there are a lot of numbers for it, but, it's certainly a systemic problem that starts right from education, right from
home.
K through 12,
yes,
up into following people into adulthood. So,
Al, what happens is I'm going to go back to special education just a little bit, and maybe you can help me on this one. Once a child is in special ed and they continue through special ed, let me even go back. If a child, let's say, if they were placed in special ed in 4th grade,
okay.
is there a chance that the child could not be in special ed once they hit high school?
There's a chance. It depends on what those academic goals are.
Okay.
So an IEP plan will have measurable goals for improvement. And, if they're able to use the supports to bridge the gap and catch up, that's certainly possible.
Okay. Again, listeners, we're not talking about special ed when it was actually what special ed was. It was those who had a actual physical disability, an emotional and psychological disability. They used to go to a different school than the other children. And what they did, they changed the law and they allowed the children who had those disabilities to go to school with all the other children. That's what special ed was.
Okay.
They changed it. So we have a lot of kids who don't have the diagnosis or the type of things that was originally what was up under special ed. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the ones who didn't have the physical disability and the emotional and psychological disability according to what the rules or the law was originally. Okay, I don't want parents to get upset when my child has, in a wheelchair or whatever that disability is they may have. I don't want those parents to get upset. We're talking about the ones that, to me, probably needed some additional tutoring, some additional help. If the parents can read and write, the parents could help them. If the parent had the resources, they can help them. And what has developed is a behavior problem for a lot of those individuals, because when they don't know the information, they end up having behavior problems in the classroom to try to mask that they don't know the information. And as they go to the next grade, it becomes compounded. So it's like school is a scaffold program. What you learn from each grade has to be applied to the next grade on up and on up. And if you didn't receive the skill sets that you needed if you're in the 4th grade, if you didn't receive it from K to 3rd, then basically you're going to you're going to show behavior problems. I always told people I had ADHD, but my grandmother beat it out of me. You had some generations, black generations, where those things, they didn't know about it, so you were corrected by, you were disciplined.
Right.
And so really it taught you how to control it. My attention at the Adult Learning Center, I make sure that it's quiet there because we have a lot of adults, their attention is very short. Any little thing distracts them.
Right.
I'm the same way. I like quietness. And if there's any noise or something, I'm very sensitive to it. It gets me off track. When I was teaching 6th grade, I would put paper on the window, the lower half of the window, because what would happen, the kids would look outside and then I would lose their attention. So that attention deficit disorder, ADHD, that is real. I don't know if they want to, for me, I didn't have to have medication, of course.
Right.
Then again, I don't know. I'm taking some medication now to keep me calm.
So you're telling me, so you're saying that a person that, when another person, making some noise, like if they're making some noise and you're trying to communicate or something like that, knock you off of your focus, that's ADHD?
No, it's not. It's my attention.
That's the intention.
I can't say that because I'm not a doctor to say that. But I am, honestly, I can be conversing with Bobby, and if you're talking over on the side, I would lose focus. Here come. Paul, I guess he wants to get into this conversation.
Come on,
but, I lose focus.
Right.
Sometimes when I can be speaking to someone.
Okay.
And I hear noise in the back.
Okay.
I would turn around and look at that noise and disregard the other person. Yeah.
So what that's called?
No, that's just me.
Attention?
My attention, I have a short,
Okay.
Yeah.
Called Marcy.
Yeah.
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction, but a short attention span too.
Right,
I've had, because that would explain that would explain why I was interested in one thing and then I stopped. Then I went to something else, then I stopped. Then I went to something else and then I stopped.
Okay.
But again, my grandmama, you sit down, you be still.
Yeah.
So you sat down and you were still.
Well, some kids with the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, they're not just, it's not just a lack of attention or a short attention span. It's also the hyperactivity side of it.
Constantly moving, constantly doing something. Yeah. And some kids are put on medication, some kids aren't. You have some parents that are against the medication, and these kids exhibit these behaviors in the classroom.
But they're giving medication in these days, right?
Yes.
Okay, because
in our day we weren't giving medication.
That's what I was just saying.
Yeah.
I was saying because I believe that I was ADHD. I believe that. because I've always been a hyper person. And that's what it is, right?
Well, I guess it's more than a normal type of.
Yeah.
It's not a Paul hyperness.
Don't they call it multitasking? What's wrong with you?
You know, they said there's not a such thing as multitasking. That's just you doing a lot of things, not getting one thing done. That's what they say it is.
Who said that?
I don't know. I read it somewhere.
On the blackboard, she wrote.
She's right.
But we have those adults, and they may or may not be able to come out of a special ed if they go to another grade if their IEP hasn't changed. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, the IEP should be adjusted every year. So, you set measurable goals every year to achieve. So that should, but, occasionally if, there's a small gap, you might be able to do the work and build it up and, catch up to where you're supposed to be.
Okay.
Now, there are some situations where that's not going to be possible, like, for example, if you're reading at a third grade level and you're going into 10th grade, you're likely not going to catch that up in such a short period of time. But yeah, it's definitely possible to improve.
Okay, so they end up graduating. They're pushed through the system.
Right.
They don't hold those children back.
Sometimes they are pushed through and graduated, and there's really not a difference between the diplomas. So
That's true.
Then you have students sometimes who are going into college that are not prepared. I mean, we've got students who are graduating from high school that are not prepared.
By far. Right. I was blessed and lucky enough to be able to hire a former college instructor as one of my adult literacy, adult education instructor. And the beauty about having him, he's now able to see why these individuals were not prepared in order to come to college.
Right.
A lot of these individuals, they tried college, but they were in the basic courses and they never tested into the core classes.
Right.
And therefore they lost their financial aid and got into a lot of trouble with their financial aid. So Al, the issue that I have is we have a lot of individuals who were special ed in school. Remember, special ed is only K through 12. And they've graduated now. And normally I'm finding, I could be wrong, but this is what I've observed. The individuals who are graduating from our schools across the United States who are in special ed, they are academically behind. So let's say that if you are now 60 years old, I can even go younger because of what I have there at our Adult Learning Center. If you were 40 years of age, let's take my 50.
Okay.
50. And you were placed in special ed third grade.
Good.
And you went through the whole entire school year. They just passed you through. Now you're out here. You're not functioning at a high school level. You're normally functioning at an early elementary level as an adult. So I have adults who have graduated. They were special ed in school, but they are in my 0 through 2nd grade program.
Right.
Even though I do have 2nd through 4th grade, but they're in my 0 through 2nd grade program. And the truth is, they were in prison. Now, I'm not sure if that was really correlation of the special ed to prison school pipeline, but they have associated with it. Those who come from special ed, they're academically behind. The literacy is very low. The comprehension is very low. So therefore, they would do some things that will allow them, make them go to prison. And it really floored me. Actually, I got a student this week that's couldn't even score them. So that was kindergarten or below.
Right.
And a lot older than I am. And so we have to, I don't even know where to even start. This is a longer conversation with special ed because they're becoming parents.
Right.
And then if they can't help their parents, if they can't help their children, I don't know. It's just so much there. It's just, we have a lot of adults who graduated from the K through 12 system who were special ed. and they don't have the skill sets to help their children.
Right.
And it's a repeated cycle. And my time is up. I really hate this. Didn't I tell you it was going to go by pretty fast?
It did go by quickly. Yep.
You're going to count me down? I don't want you to count me down. I really want to stay on the show. So, listeners, I want to tell you thank you so much. And my viewers, I don't ever tell you thank you. But I want to tell you thank you very much for listening to me. And hopefully you'll join me on next week. Have a great work week.